and with the increasing demands for water, and starting from the consideration that 70% of our needs are related to agriculture, some countries started spontaneously to cultivate crops in other countries. So it happened, for instance, that some companies of food production in China, they went to Africa to cultivate crops, and some company in Italy, in the same way, they went to country-rich zones, to water-rich countries, in order to produce the most expensive in terms of water requirements crops. This phenomenon is called land grabbing, meaning that you grab the land from another country. And some countries started to import the food which is more water demanding. Like, for instance, let's make an example. In Italy, and in this region, some 20 years ago, they realized that kiwis were a very fruitful crop, fruitful in terms of income, of return, of commercial return, of money income. And therefore they started planting kiwi trees, and they realized soon after that kiwis were highly water demanding, and they needed to use more water for irrigation, and therefore they experienced water scarcity. So several farms digged some internal lakes, they developed some internal storage in order to be able to irrigate. And then they realized that, it's not the best solution because it is expensive producing kiwis here. So some companies realized that it may be less expensive to import them from water-rich countries. And therefore, this is a process that evolved spontaneously. So instead of promoting water-expensive crops at the local level, companies started to import these foods, these highly water-demanding foods from abroad. So the first phenomenon that I mentioned was land grabbing. And land grabbing was it is being practiced by most of the developed countries. They basically, because a country needs to be developed and well organized in order to bring cultivations in the other side of the world. And the second phenomenon, importing foods, is called virtual water trade. So, if it is not managed, this process needs to be, there is the risk that the process is not equitable. But if it is managed, it is an interesting perspective for importing water, for moving water. Instead of moving water, we move the items that are more water demanding. And this is, as I said, it's an interesting perspective. The problem is that it's very difficult to manage. This is a global network of land grabbing, virtual water trade, which is difficult to manage because as any global network, it's not easy. It's subjected to political influence, it's subjected to the influence of the market, of course. But this is the virtual water trade, and it's something that water resources managers today need to take into account because it could be practiced also internally in the countries. So if you have some problems, water problems in the south of Italy, and basically it's water problems for agriculture, it may be more convenient that some goods are moved instead of moving water. This figure is interesting. You have it in the web pages. I'm sorry, here it's not very large. But I wanted just to, you cannot read it, but I want to give you some numbers because it is interesting to give you some orders of magnitude. So, for instance, let me see if I can open it. Just 1 second. I think I can get it very easily. Let me see if I can. Okay, here it is. Okay. So, first, this is the total amount, these drops represent the total amount of water. The total amount, and I cannot see colors, these 3 drops, just 1 second, okay. These 3 drops here, these are depicted in a different color, you can see it, is fresh water. So first of all, this gives a picture of the proportion of fresh water, 3 drops, against the total amount of water. So 97% of water on Earth is salt water, okay? And fresh water is 3%. Still, there is enough fresh water for everybody. And even if we project an increase of global population to twice the current numbers, there will be fresh water for everybody. The problem is that fresh water is not evenly distributed. The distribution is heterogeneous. Very often we have water when and where we don't need it. But again, only 3%. And readily available fresh water is 1 drop, because the other 2 drops are ice, polar ice, etc. And therefore, we can use just 1%. But still, this 1%, as I said, it's enough for everybody. This picture gives to you a perspective. If desalination was or will become efficient, we will have solved water problems. Okay? For almost all of the countries, because in the world there are only 48 countries without access to the sea. They are called landlocked countries, which means that desalination could be a solution forever. The problem is that now it's not efficient. It requires a lot of energy, it's slow, so we cannot think of using desalinated water unless in very critical situations. So they use desalination in Australia, they use desalination in the Middle East, Israel uses desalination, but it's, as I said, extremely expensive. It's extremely expensive. Okay, now let's look at the water footprint. What is the water footprint? The water footprint is the amount of water, the volume of water per capita, per each human, that is consumed by countries either directly or through goods, maybe importing goods. And you see what are the countries with the dark colors that have the highest water footprint. The countries that use more water, either directly or through importation, virtual water trade. This is another useful information, and you can see here 70% agriculture, we know that. But let's see some interesting numbers. These are the countries that have the highest renewable water resources. Brazil, Russia, USA, China, Indonesia. Renewable means that, it's clear what renewable means, okay? There are some water sources that are not renewable. Think of very deep wells. You get water that may have been stored like 2,000 years ago and may take 2,000 years to restore. And this means that it's not renewable. But look at these numbers. How much water do you think is needed to produce 1 kilogram of beef? It's unbelievable. You need 15,000 liters of water, which means 15 cubic meters. And this is something that people don't believe. So one day I spoke with a farmer and he said, I tell you, my cow don't drink so much water. But I said, yes, but it's not just drinking. You need grass to feed the cows. And he said, yeah, but I don't irrigate my grass. So that, okay, you don't irrigate, but some people irrigate. For instance, here they irrigate. And it's hard to believe, but 1 kilogram of beef requires 15 cubic meters of water. 1 kilogram of chocolate requires 24,000 liters of water to be produced. And 1 kilogram of olives, 4,000. 1 kilogram of sugar, 1,500. 1 cup of coffee, 140 liters. This clarifies the importance of virtual water trade. If you import beef or chocolate, you get a sense of the amount of the virtual water trade. Okay, I need to break down now, I need to break, and for about 10 minutes. Okay, I'm sorry for this.